people are like, my family ate like this, or they smoked, or they did these things. But like those vices were probably there in order to keep their sanity. While their legacy maybe wasn't fully what you wanted, their sacrifices allow you to build your legacy today.
I think we can often get caught up in thinking about our legacy as being something that has to be super desirable, aspirational, make a lot of money, or impact 100 million people. When you impacting 2 people who could go out and impact 2 more people who impact 2 more people, it could be just as compounding.
I don't know. Would we schedule our time to go out to eat?
No.
I don't think so.
This is Sistas Declassified, the podcast where
Taylor
and Taryn,
your virtual sisters, share experiences, insights, and of course the juicy secrets that never leave the sister circle.
So shh, listen up. The Declassified convos are starting now. Welcome back to Sistas Declassified. We're the real life sisters who started a podcast to keep our legacy going.
But before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe for your weekly dose of declassified moments.
Let's go ahead and get into our declassified moment for today.
No filter, no fluff.
Your legacy isn't built tomorrow. It starts today. Every loving choice, action, and step counts. So last episode, we talked about how love creates legacy. And so we're going to kind of close that conversation today with giving us some more actionable steps to like what it actually means to build your legacy starting today.
Because I think ultimately love isn't just something that you receive, right? But it's actually a catalyst for change. Because when you feel safe or loved, right, that creates your desire to create or do things.
Well, yeah, I think it gives you the space to do it, right? Because we had talked about maybe in a previous episode being kind of in a survival mode a little bit. And when you're in survival mode, you're not creative usually. Unlike, like other than solving your immediate survival problem, it's hard to think outside of yourself. And so being able to be in a space where you feel safe and loved allows you to create
and evolve, right? And grow. And like, you know, the term like breaking generational curses, like not the only reason, but a big reason you are able to break those curses is because of the love you received, right? Like sometimes we stay entrenched in a situation because we're still in survival mode, right? And you obviously can still be receiving love when you're in survival mode, but all your needs aren't being met.
Right.
And so that's the main focus, is surviving. Versus when you're trying to break a generational curse, it's because like somebody fought really hard to get you to where you guys are, right? So like people are like, my family ate like this, or they smoked, or they did these things. But like those vices were probably there in order to keep their sanity. And now you're at a spot where you can reflect and assess and make a change.
Right. You have the space to do that, the freedom to do that.
Yeah. And so while their legacy maybe wasn't fully what you wanted, their sacrifices allow you to build your legacy today. And so I think, our goal today is to just talk about what does it mean to build your legacy. So not just focusing on the love you receive, but using that love as a catalyst for evolution kind of thing. Even if your craft is, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of something super random and out of the box, fishing. Maybe your craft is fishing, right? And you love to do that thing and you want people to learn to love that too.
Okay.
Because fishing has a lot of great benefits, right? You're able to slow down, you're out in nature, you're connecting to the creation of God or whatever you believe in, the universe. That is allowing you to get food, right? Survival skills. There's all kinds of benefits to knowing how to fish, right?
Right.
But in your legacy or in love for fish, you might decide, I'm going to get a boat and take all these people out to go fishing.
Right. I mean, I think about you and Brandon. I don't know if you ever went fishing before Brandon, did you?
No.
Yeah.
And I still probably wouldn't go without him. But still, I'm just thinking about, like, what do you love, right? And how can you create a legacy from that because you love it?
And allowing that to be good enough or feel good enough or worthy enough. Because I think people can sometimes get stuck on that. It's like, is just because I love it, is it good enough? And the answer is yes.
Yeah. I was talking to Dad, and he's like, our dad DJs. So I was naming, like, you could be teaching people to DJ. And he's like, there's so many DJs out there. I'm like, okay, but that doesn't mean you can't also show up and teach people how to DJ.
You might be the perfect teacher for someone who hasn't tried yet because they haven't found you.
Right. And so, and that is your legacy, right? If you teach one person, they can teach one person, or they're playing music for somebody's event that is memorable for their life. That is still your legacy. You still had a hand in that thing. But I think if we play small or don't feel like our impact is big enough, then we end up not moving. We get stuck.
And I mean, most of the influential people we can think of didn't get there by themselves. There was the music teacher or the coach or the supportive cousin or whomever behind them, kind of pushing them along the way when they needed it.
Right. Even like the masters in any space, right? They had somebody behind them showing them love and pushing them forward. Or maybe it wasn't always love, right? It might have also been some tough love, thinking about like an Abby Lee moment, right? Because all them dance mom girls, well, most of them are doing something. And although she wasn't loving, she still showed up every day, providing them with consistency that allowed them to have a legacy. But
yeah,
anyway,
fun example.
I just thought of her as a mentor / coach who was showing up, and obviously she loved them in her own ways.
Yes, and in her own way.
In her own ways. And then you could go back to our last episodes about loving people the way that they need versus how you think they need it.
I think, though, with bringing up Abby, that's a good point, though, because in the last episode, when we were talking about legacies and acknowledging our ancestors and all that they've done for us, some people might feel like their ancestors didn't do anything for them, which I would challenge you, right? You're here, so something happened. But some people might feel like what came before them was not quite enough. And that doesn't keep you from being able to move forward.
It doesn't. And obviously we don't know every person's situation, and it probably is true for you who feel that way, that people didn't do enough for you. But those are still catalysts for change, right? And so if they didn't do enough, how can you lead with love now, right? And knowing that you didn't get the love that you need, how can you provide that love to someone else and yourself so that you can continue your legacy in a way that feels good to you? Because I think if we continue to hold on to the hurt, we're not actually creating at least positive change.
Well, and we're stuck in the past.
We're stuck in the past and maybe not acknowledging where you currently are and how you can move forward.
Yeah. And I mean, like she said, we don't know your life. But I would find it hard to believe that if you are taking a moment to watch this podcast, that you didn't have somebody somewhere at some point give you some love, even if it was yourself. Acknowledging yourself, giving you some love, or taking care of yourself. You don't need the world to do it, but a small act from somebody somewhere, even if it's just you, counts.
Definitely. Oh, and I think you also named something for me, or helped me to realize that legacy isn't built in perfection, right? And so similarly to those people who you can look back and point out everything they didn't do. But if you could acknowledge that legacy isn't built in perfection, what are the things that they did do? And how can you say like, okay, like my mom wasn't home any day, but I still have food.
Right. I had a place to live.
Right. Like, yeah, what were the little things that you could tell these things were in love? Maybe it wasn't perfect, but I was provided for or cared for. There was effort in this area. I think that really can shift something in you in any relationship and any dynamic, personally and with other people.
Yeah, because I mean, unfortunately, at the end of the day, nobody really has to do anything for you at all. I mean, obviously, there are some legal requirements, right? Like I'm thinking about being a parent, for example. But even then, somebody could be like, no thanks, right? And choose not to have that responsibility. But the fact that someone has chosen to take you on in whatever capacity, whether it be as a coach, a parent, a mentor, a classmate, whatever, showing you a little bit of love is more than they had to do.
Yeah.
Which sounds bad, but then when you think about all of the places that you do receive it, it's kind of amazing because it's so many people making choices.
People making choices and choices on your behalf and for your benefit. Hopefully. Right? Obviously there might be people who aren't thinking about you. But for those who you can acknowledge that yes, they are thinking about me and want the best for me. And they're not always perfect. They make mistakes, but they are wanting me to succeed. But anyways, it's not just about love today. We're also talking about the legacy that you create because of that love. And so how do you do that? I think obviously we're thinking the first step is first acknowledging what love have you received and what love do you hold that is going to allow you to produce a legacy? Because first you need to know, what are you trying to create?
Right, right. You need to be aware of what it is that you're trying to push forward or bring into the world.
Mm-hmm. And then I think after that, it's just acknowledging, while it's not perfect, there has to be steps you take every day.
Right.
So like you have your overarching destination, and what are the little steps that you're taking all the time in order to get to that legacy? So like for me, if I'm thinking about in my relationship, the legacy that we obviously want to have long term is marriage and kids and home, blah, blah, blah. And inspiring others to have that same love, inspiring our own kids to have that love that they can then produce for their own kids, right? But then that requires me to show up. Sorry if that was loud. That requires me to show up a certain way every day, right? I wake up in the morning.
Or most days.
Or most days, right? Because it's not perfect.
It's not perfect.
But even on those days where I can't show up, can I name that? Like, I don't have the energy for this today. That is still me working towards my legacy because I'm naming, I can't show up for you 100% today because I don't have it in me. But this is what I can do.
I can give you that 40. And here's what 40 looks like today.
Right.
Here's what my 100% looks like today, honestly.
Right.
Because every day my 100% might be a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that builds your legacy, that communication, that awareness of yourself and how you can show up is, I think, very big personally.
I think to the point of communication, though, also it's also about the community. Because I think once you've kind of named for yourself what it is you want and what it looks like for you to show up 100% each and every day, communicating with your community about it and bringing them in on the legacy building is another step you can take to make it come true.
Yeah.
You're not going to get anywhere by yourself.
But I mean, I'm like, you might build your legacy without your community, but maybe your community is the ones checking in on how it's going. Like because like with this podcast, for example, we're building it, right? And we would love for this to be a legacy. And some of our community is supportive of it. But the fact of the matter is most of our community is not. True. And while I'm not saying that as it's a problem, but I will say that they do tap in every now and then. Or if I say, oh, I'm going to shoot the podcast, they might say, oh, I'm glad you're still doing that. Or I'm glad that's going well or something. It doesn't sound like I'm watching, listening. Right? But they're checking in about it. They're asking me how it's going. They're keeping me on a trajectory, even though they're not necessarily in it with me. Yeah. So, but I do agree that community is important, and you can reassess if you'd like your community to be really in it, participating with you, or just kind of on the sideline cheering you on.
Yeah. To that end, I guess you're right. How your community participates is sort of up to you and up to them. And it might also require establishing new communities or new connections.
Definitely. Because, yeah, the people you've been with all along, as you're changing and growing, they might not grow in that same way. That doesn't mean your legacy isn't important or shouldn't be shared because they are not interested in it necessarily. You just have to grow around them.
Yeah. Dang.
You felt that one? Yeah, it was feeling a little sad to you?
I don't know if sad is the right word, but just like I could see it being a little lonely. I think about like my content creation business, for example. Prior to doing the podcast with you, it was something I pretty much did by myself. And yes, there were folks I built community with who also create content or created similar types of content to me, though mine has evolved and changed over time. Started with like fashion and hair videos and stuff I don't care about, to like more personal or like even similar to what we talk about on the podcast, honestly. And there were moments where I felt like, dang, this is important stuff and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody comments. Nobody got anything to say. That's crazy to me. Because in person, y'all got lots to say, but online, y'all quiet. And that used to make me sad. But then I realized that it's just like not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. And unfortunately, the closest people to you don't always get on your bandwagon until you've reached whatever they deemed as the level of success.
Until you popped.
I've noticed, and people only value a certain level, a certain type of success.
Say more. Like what?
Like,
you mean like monetary success or
monetary success, and even who you rub shoulders with. Like, we all get jobs successfully every day, get promotions every day, move up in our careers all the time. But who gets their flowers when they do that? Somebody who's like a politician, somebody who's rubbing shoulders with a celebrity, somebody who's
yeah, I get what you mean. Like, there's the flashy side of
someone who's being called
building.
Doctor. Like, those things are all glamorized, right? But the average person who's just like, I'm in my 10th year of teaching.
They're like, oh, good. Somebody's got to do it.
Exactly.
Bless your heart.
Or like, right. Or let's see, what is another one? I decided to be a yoga teacher. Or a trainer.
Right. Like, and people are like, oh, okay.
Go off.
Train those people.
Exactly.
Do those stretches.
Like, there's just certain things that people deem as a legacy building activity and some that are not seen that way, even though they're all having an impact.
And they all have the potential to have lasting impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
And really, I mean, a 10-year teacher, do you know how many people you've touched?
So many.
You know how many lives you probably impacted? And when I think about my teacher, I can tell you my teacher from kindergarten. And now, was she the best teacher? I don't really know. But I know she taught me how to count to 100. I know we had tadpoles in our class, and I thought that was cool. I know I used to hide under the table during cleanup time, and she would let me. Right? Like, there's just random. And I know that those aren't the big deal. And I'm saying count to 100. It was in Spanish. So,
okay.
But for real. I know that's not a huge legacy, but I can remember her, and I'm sure if I ran into her one day and said, "I remember you," that would touch her.
Yeah,
and yeah. So I just, when we think about what our legacy is and the legacy we are creating, I don't put yours down because someone else's is on TV or someone else's is being cheered on Instagram more than what you're doing, and it's honestly probably being cheered on more because they're more willing to share that versus what you've accomplished. You might be treating it as small. So yeah, no one's going to shout you out and acknowledge it.
If you don't tell people what you got going on, how will they know? How will they know? And I think this is something, again, I struggle with in content creation. Wanting things to be sexy, wanting things to be like flashy. And I don't mean like sexy, like sex symbol sexy. I just mean like desirable, right? I think celebrity culture and capitalism have convinced us that certain things are desirable and other things are just okay. And I think we can often get caught up in thinking about our legacy as being something that has to be super desirable, aspirational, make a lot of money, or impact 100 million people. When you impacting 2 people who could go out and impact 2 more people who impact 2 more people, it could be just as compounding, right, as that one commercial that so-and-so got that one time.
Yeah. I'm like thinking about a friend of mine, her grandparents passed, and I went to the grandparents' funeral, and it was so interesting to hear all the people share stories about the grandmother, because there was all about like the love that they had for each other and the love that they shared, and that they every action that they took was clearly out of love and for other people. They didn't have these super crazy jobs. They weren't doing like, they didn't have all this money and outlandish things that they were providing to people, but their energy, their impact, and their love that they provided left a legacy, so much so that you have 20 people standing up during your funeral to name how that was impactful to them. But it mattered. It created a legacy that people wanted to carry on, and people aspired to provide that level of love and care for the next person. I think that that's so important.
Right. It is cool to meet your celebrity faves or whatever.
Right. But I'm just saying the average Joe, the average person are the ones who are actually making the world go round, the ones who are actually impacting you on a day-to-day basis.
Building the everyday legacies.
The everyday legacies. Absolutely. So I just want to encourage you all to see your life as an everyday legacy. through action steps. And maybe some of the reasons that you don't feel like your life is a legacy is because maybe you're not moving.
Or you're waiting for the perfect moment.
The perfect moment. And there is no such thing as a perfect moment. Or you're waiting for you to have a little bit more knowledge. Or you're waiting for you to have the perfect body to put yourself out there. Or the perfect tagline. And there's really no such thing.
Don't get stuck in the plan. Don't get stuck in your head. It's better to be stuck in the action, self to self.
Definitely better to be stuck in the action. But also, it's okay if there's days of inaction. Because you planted seeds, right? And so sometimes when you plant a seed, you might not have any growth some days. And some days you might come down and see that you sprouted some flowers. So I think just giving yourself a little bit of grace and acknowledging that every day you take a step forward is a step toward your legacy. My reminder to you today is just to appreciate the little steps, appreciate the journey, and acknowledge that every time that you show up, every day that you wake up is an opportunity to show love, which will create a legacy.
Amen, amen.
Snaps to that. Okay.
Let's get to our Sister Circle question for today.
What is one small step that you can take towards creating the legacy that you would like to leave behind? And I would say for myself, my small step is this podcast, for one. But outside of that, working on my own holistic practices that I can share with the world and offerings that I can share. Also showing up at work every day, being kind and a listening ear for my clients, I think is a way that I produce my legacy.
I wish I had a very clear, sharp answer like you did. I guess then my next step would be to figure out what a legacy of balance looks like for me, because I feel like I said this before, I'm kind of all or nothing, and I get stuck in the perfection of it all. Like, what is my legacy? Is it, I want it to be sexy, I want it to be flashy, I want it to touch a million people, but like, what does my everyday legacy look like? And I think my next step is imagining what my everyday average legacy could look like, as opposed to shooting for Oprah. Oprah type legacy.
Yeah, I like that. I think that is a good place for people who have, maybe this is the first time you're even thinking about this. It's just like, what would make me feel like I'm leaving something positive behind? And maybe it's take some time to think about it.
Yeah, that's my step. I gotta think now. Got some homework.
Yeah, but I think we just tried to live this up for today as we end Black History Month and navigate what our legacies are. As we look back at our ancestors and their legacies, not just the big ones, but the everyday ones, I think it allowed us to see the world a little differently and what our legacies will be moving forward.
So we hope a little glimpse into our family legacies inspires you to take some time to think about yours.
With that, we thank y'all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with a friend.
Yes.
Bye.